Hey everybody, we're going to be talking about slope. If you're tuning in, you'll want to remember that we had that little dance that we did in class, and you want to remember, and I want you to take a highlighter if you've got one. I'm going to pick a pretty blue. If it's positive, you're going up the hill. If it's negative, down the hill. You put your hands together in a horizontal line, which means you have a zero slope. Put your hands up in the air, which means you have no slope, and therefore you are undefined. We're going to go through each slope one at a time, each section. So there's your positive slope. And when you're working with the graph like we had on number 1, you want to go ahead and go from one point to the next. And we're going to count our loops. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4. This is going up 4. We recall we're doing from left to right because we walk from left to right. This is me kind of getting ready for what we're about to do. We went up 4. And then always to the right. And we ended up going 2. The next step for this would be to translate it into numbers. So when we're going up 4, it's a positive 4. And because you're always going to the right, it's just going to be a positive 2. Positive 4 over positive 2 simplifies to 2 over 1, which is really just 2. So your slope with this is 2. Let's change up our colors, guys. We have the power. Let's use that technology. All right, the second point, they're not always going to give you a graph. They're going to give you 2 points. So if that's the case, there are 2 ways you can do it. You can use your slope formula, which is m equals y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. And then you end up having to pick a point. You have to decide which one's which. So I'm going to make these my x1 and y1, and these my x2 and y2. And then you have to plug the numbers in. So it becomes 2 minus, because it's a negative, we're going to use parentheses, all over 5 minus 4. And then you do 2 minus negative 1, which gets you 3. And then 5 minus 4, which gets you 1, which simplifies to 3. Now, if you're doing all of that and you are lost all right here because you don't understand this formula, I have a tiny little hack for you. I'm going to go ahead and erase this. So your hack for this is going to be actually pretty simple. What we're going to do is we're going to write each of these points without the parentheses. And we're going to line them up using our commas. And then we remember our dear friend, Dr. Idiot, and use these commas to help you make that T-chart. And you know how to work it when you've got a T-chart in front of you. From 2 to negative 1, you have to subtract 3. From 5 to 4, we subtracted 1, which means that for our slope, which is the change of y over the change in x, you get negative 3 over negative 1. And when you end up simplifying that, you get the same answer of 3. So no matter which way you use, whether it be the formula or this T-chart right here, it's going to help you and it's going to work either way. We're going to do the same thing for all of them. I'm going to keep using the t-chart. If you like using the formula, that's totally fine. Use that formula and then check your answer with what I get. We're going to do our loop-de-loops. And remember, because we're walking from left to right, we end up going down 1, 2, 3, and always to the right. And we went right, 2. If we were using rise over run, we went down 3 and to the right, because it's always to the right, 2. When we simplify that into numbers, down 3 is really -3 over +2. Because I can't simplify this anymore, this right here is your final slope. And that's all you have to do. Sometimes you won't even need to simplify. But always check if you do. So I'm going to go ahead and set up our t-chart method for this one. I've got 0, 6, and then 5, -4. Use that t-chart that we know from Dr. Idiot and find our differences. So from 6 to -4, you are going to be subtracting 10, which is your change in y. From 0 to 5, you're adding 5. Now, -10 over 5, yes, you've got the right numbers, but you still need to simplify. And -10 over 5 simplifies to -2 over 1, which is really just -2. And that's how you would end up working it for a negative slope. Let's go ahead and move on to 0 slope. And oops, wait, before we do, I'm sorry, I forgot my highlight. For 0 slope, remember you're putting your hands together in a horizontal line, and that's a little bit diagonal, I'm sorry. So that way you have a 0 slope. And this line right here, what's really happening is there's no rise right here. Your rise over run, it's 0 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, we already know that the slope is 0 because it's a horizontal line. But sometimes you're not going to be able to see that when you have something like number 6 right here. For number 6, when you've got points, I've got 0, 4, and -3, 4. Set up my t-chart. From 4 to 4 is 0. And from 0 to -3, you've subtracted 3. So right here, my change in y over my change in x, I get 0 over -3. And there's something in my classroom that you might have noticed, you might not have noticed, and you've been wondering about it. Oops. And that's okay right here. This looks like an okay because you've got the 0 at the top. And your okay is always just going to get you 0 because it's okay for 0 to be divided by any number. And so your answer for this is just 0. But now let's go to a no slope, and that should say no slope. I'm sorry. Oops. Your papers are right. Let's draw our highlight that goes up and down because your hands are up in the air like just don't care because you have no slope, but you are also Undefined. That's a quick way of shorthanding it. So this one right here, it's a vertical line, which means you don't have a slope. It's no slope. And guess what? That would be your answer. Now, another way to actually write this would be to say that it's got undefined. Either or answer is correct. Either answer is correct. Now let's do number 8 when you've got things like these two, your points. So we're going to go ahead and make up our t-chart again. I've got 5, 2, and 5, -2. Make your T. From 2 to -2, you subtract 4. 5 to 5, it stayed the same, so it's just 0. And your slope for this, again, remember it's your change in y over your change in x. And for this one, your change of y was -4. Wow. And your change of x was 0. Oh my. So on your paper, we already wrote okay, but for this one, it's a no. It is no slope because it is not okay to have a 0 at the bottom right here. So your answer would just be no slope. I'm going to be uploading this document right here so you can see what my work looks like and you can have it to look over with this video. Please be sure you watch it entirely. You are responsible for it. And I want you to remember, when you're going up the hill, it's a positive slope. When you're going down the hill, it's a negative slope. And then we put our hands together in a horizontal line, which means you have a 0 slope. You put your hands up in the air like you just don't care because you have no slope, which means you are undefined.